And Samson, I'm not sure what Samson's thinking at this point. I'm really not. But he's still there. And so we're going to pick up again in verse 15. Because she says it so much better than I do. Verse 15. Then she said to him, "How can you say I love you when your heart is not with me? You have deceived me these 3 times and have not told me where your great strength is." It came about when she pressed him daily with her words and urged him that his soul was annoyed to death. Now, maybe married couples understand this more than the young one, but we're not going to go there. She annoyed him to death. And, another version said that she pestered him. What is Samson thinking? What is he thinking? But sure enough, she annoyed him to death. So he told her all that was in his heart and said to her, "A razor has never come on my head, for I have been a Nazirite to God from my mother's womb. If I am shaved, then my strength will leave me, and I will become weak and be like any other man." When Delilah saw that he had told her all that was in his heart, she sent and called the lords of the Philistines, saying, "Come up once more, for he has told me all that is in his heart." Then the lords of the Philistines came up to her and brought the money in their hands. I get the feeling that Delilah truly sensed that what Samson had told her was truly his heart this time. And she told the Philistines, and apparently she was convincing to them because the lords of the Philistines, when they came up, they actually brought the money in hand. And in most business transactions I know of, money's usually the last thing that people are bringing up, especially when it's coming to pay someone for something. These guys were prepared to pay. They knew that this was about to happen. So we come to verse 19. She made him sleep on her knees and called for a man and had him shave off the 7 locks of his hair. If the other ones didn't tell me he's a heavy sleeper, this one did. Having his head shaved of his hair, still sleeping, it says that she began to afflict him and his strength left him. There's a few things we want to look at in Samson's life. And one of the first things is that the pursuit of pleasure, personal gain, personal comfort is going to end in heartache for Christians. It's not that gain, comfort, and pleasure are bad things, but it's the lust after them, the pursuit of them. It's not good. It's another thing. It replaces that lust and the pursuit after God and that relationship with God. Samson had been faced with a number of crossroads from his birth up. He's had opportunity after opportunity to pursue after the Lord, to know Him, to be used of Him powerfully. Several times he had events come that the Bible says that the Spirit of the Lord came on him mightily, and he did some awesome things. But yet, choice after choice, they keep being guided down this path of personal pleasure. He did what he liked, what he saw. If he liked what he saw, he went after it. That's what he did. And there's a few problems when that happens. When those things happen, there's some things that begin to happen in our life. And one of the first things that happens is we start developing a distance between us and God. Not that God removes Himself from us, but that we're removed from Him. So we pick up in verse 20. She said, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson," just like she had 4 other times, or 3 other times. This is the 4th. "And he awoke from his sleep and said, I will go out as at other times and shake myself free." I'm beginning to get the impression, had the impression for a little while, that I think Samson started thinking this strength was in and of himself. Because he was just going to get up and just do it himself, just do it like he's always been doing it, and just run them off. But here's the sad part. The last little sentence in verse 20. "But he did not know that the Lord had departed from him." He didn't even know. The pursuit of pleasure ended in heartache for Samson, I think most painfully in this way, and his relationship with God was severed. The next thing we find comes in verse 21. It says, the Philistines seized him and gouged out his eyes. And they brought him down to Gaza and bound him with bronze chains, and he was a grinder in the prison. Now, they gouged out his eyes. What eyes represent sight. When I thought about it a little bit deeper, it's spiritual sight as well. When we give in to the pursuit of the pleasure, the lust of the pleasures, we begin to also develop a spiritual blindness. We start missing the things that God has for us and that God has in store for us. We're not seeking after Him, we're now seeking after the pleasures. So we turn a blind eye to it, and we become blinded to it. Samson just sets a sad example for us, hopefully to learn from. And another thing that may develop from our own personal pursuit and lust of pleasure is our own humiliation. As a Christian, we have taken the name of God upon ourselves, Christ in Christian, we are His. And then at the same time, we present that we are pursuing after ourselves. It's trying to put two things in a box that's not big enough for those two things. There's always room for one or the other. So just remember, with Samson, as the pursuit of pleasure, if it's the pursuit that fills us, and after the pleasure, after the gain, even just our own comfort, if that's what we're pursuing, we will suffer. We will have some heartache. And I'm afraid that the cost of that may be higher than we really want to pay. But the good news behind that is that, God's going to have His will accomplished. God was seeking an opportunity against these Philistines. Before Samson was born, it says that the Israelites did evil in the sight of the Lord. And because of that, He allowed the Philistines, an unrighteous nation, to come and afflict them because of their unrighteousness. So they come up there, they're afflicting them, but it's come about time that God wanted to bring up a deliverer. It's now time for Israel to step out of that affliction and start living in the promises of God and the rewards that God has. And Samson, I say, failed to follow Him most of his life. But yet at the same time, God allowed all this and is directing Samson, and here we have him, and we're going to jump all the way to verse 30. Remember I said Samson's standing up here between the pillars. His hands are on the pillars. He says that prayer, Lord, just remember me one more time. Give me the strength. And verse 30 says that Samson said, let me die with the Philistines. And he bent with all his might so that the house fell on the lords and all the peoples who were in it. So he just got down and pushed. Now, come on. The Bible said a little bit earlier, a couple of verses, we didn't cover it, but it said that there was 3,000 people on the rooftop alone of this place. So if the rooftop's stout enough to hold 3,000 people, then I get the feeling that these pillars are fairly stout pillars. And humanly, realistically, that can't be done. It cannot be pushed over. But he pushed.